Hello, everybody, and welcome to our second episode of Fire and Pod, a House of the Dragon recap brought to you by Silent Podcast, where we are anything but silent. I am your host, Katie, also known as Real Slim Katie, and I am here again with my wonderful panel, Josh and Chanelle. Josh, how are you doing today? Chanelle, how are you? Do you guys smell like dragons? What do you think dragons smell like? I'm just going to jump right into the dragon scent.
Yeah, how would you like to? Have you ever been in a situation where you're like around like the most important people that control your fate, and the first comment someone makes to you is, "Oh, you have some BO."
Not only like your mom
brimstone.
and your dad are like, you stink. You freaking stink.
Yeah,
Pretty
you
embarrassing.
straight up smell like a dragon. I feel like dragons smell like fire and brimstone, which I've heard smells like rotten eggs. So I'd rather not smell like rotten eggs.
Kind of like a
I think.
sulfury smell.
Yeah, I'm not down.
Yeah. I was thinking it would smell like maybe like a fireside candle, which I love, but clearly no one was happy with the smell. So
No, I'm
I'm
gonna say
probably
no.
wrong there. Yeah.
Yeah.
How are you guys today?
Doing great. I'm very happy to be talking some Game of Thrones, especially because it was good. It's been years. It's been years and years since we've had some good Westeros content, and so I'm glad to be here.
Me too. I was very happy with the episode. It's exactly how I expected. It felt like we're like back to the beginnings, like with the OG Game of Thrones kind of deal. It felt like, we're starting fresh. We got a new cat. Like they're just building up the castle. They're just building up everything. Like I feel like it's a fresh start. So I'm really excited for the season.
Yeah, I went in, as we talked about, cautiously optimistic, but as soon as the music hit and then we were in kind of that flashback scene where we were seeing, the court and the council decide who Jaehaerys's heir was going to be, as we talked about last time we spoke, I was just like, oh, I'm totally in on this. Like, I'm in. They drove me back in within like 2 seconds.
Yeah, no, it was good. I'm really loving that the narration is by Rhaenyra.
Mhm.
Like that's kind of cool because I feel like a lot of it is it's going to be based around her for the most part with this whole like heir situation and things going on. So it's cool that she's doing the narrate. There was no narration in Game of Thrones actually. So
Yeah.
that's cool that we kind of get I feel like they're doing this because there's a lot of context that's going to go into this. There's a lot of history, so I feel like a narrator is really needed to fill in some of the gaps, which would have kind of been nice for Game of Thrones as well if they had a bit of narration, because there's a lot of times you're like, who's this person related to, like who's this the person aligned to again, like, so it's nice that they added that piece
for sure.
Just in general, I loved the prologue, that first scene. I mean, thinking back to Game of Thrones, the first prologue, it was intriguing with the White Walkers, and they made it into the symbol, which didn't really matter. But it was intriguing from the beginning with Game of Thrones, but I felt like this was very different. Game of Thrones started with like the whole zoomed out existential threat right from the very beginning, and then this was just more of like the nitty-gritty political stuff that they're just dropping us right in the middle there, and then making sure we understand kind of just the chess pieces on the board from the very first few minutes, and gave me a little bit of the Lord of the Rings vibes with like the narration voiceover from the beginning. So I and that's the highest compliment to compare it to Lord of the Rings in any way,
Totally,
on my end.
George R. Martin would be very happy to hear that, I think.
Yeah, I was going to say he's a huge Tolkien fan. So.
Huge. Mm-hmm. Yeah, and, I know we talked last week about the music. The music, the theme was very similar, almost the same, but a little bit of a twist on the Game of Thrones theme. Were you guys expecting that? I was expecting something new. So that was like the only thing I think I was a little disappointed by this episode, is that we didn't get like a new grand theme song that would be stuck in our heads for a million seasons.
I was thinking that too, Katie. Like when I came in, I was like, okay, are we gonna get like that epic like map scene? Yeah. Which I think would have been really helpful, because we have the High Towers, we have the is it the Valyrians? Is that their last name? I think so, because it's Corlys. I think his last name's Valyrian. I always forget.
Let me see. It is Corlys. I have it written down from last week. Corlys.
I think it's something similar to Valyrian, but it's like
it's like difference. Close. Yeah. I was
Valerian.
Valerian.
There you
Okay.
go. Yeah.
Let me add that to my notes. Anyway, I had to write down people's names and how to pronounce them this time. So I didn't
I
mess
have
it
like
up.
7 pages of
Yeah.
notes here, so
But yeah,
you're
like
not alone.
yeah, so you could see where everyone's landed. I feel like the Valerians are like, you know, what the Greyjoys were in Game of Thrones, but like where do they live? Do they live on Pike? Like what's going on? So it'd be good to see like what the map looked like compared to what Game of Thrones were. But you know, it is what it is. Maybe they just, because it's like not the main show, they just wanted to kind of keep it low key or something.
Yeah, I would love to see the modern day map. I was excited that we got, even throughout the episode, just a few names from other houses that we knew, like the Baratheons, and we saw some Dornishmen. We saw a Stark toward the end. That was exciting. We saw, I think the Tarleys were mentioned. So it's all people that we know pretty well from the Song of Ice and Fire Game of Thrones series, which is exciting. I don't know, hearing those like little throwbacks, it gets you like kind of excited, even though we obviously ended in not such a great place with some of them, but that's okay.
Yeah. I'm just curious. I'm like, where are those Lannisters? That was my thought. I was like, we didn't get any people.
Did they not show up?
Yeah,
No, we didn't get a
no
Lannister,
Lannisters
right.
So that put me on edge. I'm like, they've got to be there somewhere.
Where are they at? Yeah, exactly.
I mean, they are kind of like new money, so to speak, in Game of Thrones world. Like they've got all the gold, but they're not like the families that everybody has.
The important family.
Yeah, because I don't think they had Casterly Rock until the events of the Robert's Rebellion. So, if I remember correctly, but so I do think they're more new money family. I guess that's what I'm picking up from them being absent, you know, from all these houses and
or maybe
the
they're
show
just
so
staying
far.
away, like they're just kind of staying neutral. They might be that like shit disturber thing, you know, later on, you know, before the war, during the war, or whatever. Who knows?
Yeah,
That's a good point. I hadn't really thought too much about them, other than some of the parallels we see with some of the characters, I think, and their ambition is very similar. I think Otto specifically is very similar to Tywin Lannister. I get big Tywin vibes from him. But we'll set the stage really quickly before we start digging into the overall recap of the show. So I guess to start off, we just decided, I think, that we're probably not going to delve too deeply into spoiler territory. So for anybody watching and listening, if you haven't read the books, I haven't read the books, Josh hasn't read the books, Chanelle's in the middle of reading the book. So I think, you know, we haven't dug too deep into spoilers. Josh and myself specifically are staying as far away, I think, as we can without needing some additional context setting. So this will be mostly spoiler free. So it'll be safe for show only viewers. So just to set that stage. And let's go ahead and we'll jump into the episode. So we open up and we have Rhaenyra, as you said, in her older state, I guess, narrating the scene of, King Jaehaerys. He ruled for 60 years with 10 adult dragons by his side. He was super powerful, peaceful ruler. Everybody was prosperous. But tragedy had struck and his 2 sons have passed away. So he called the Great Council in to choose an heir. And there were 14 succession claims that were heard and only 2 were considered. Rhaenys, the eldest daughter of King Jaehaerys, and her younger cousin, Viserys. Am I saying his name right? Viserys. Yeah, Viserys. Sorry. God. Oh my God. I'm already blowing it. We're only 5 minutes.
Listen, their names are crazy.
I know, and I spelled them all differently every time in my notes. That's why I'm like, I don't know I was like rapid fire typing.
Yeah, because like there's Viserys. Is it Viserys? Like the brother of Dany or whatever.
Yes. Right.
Yeah. But this one's like different than I think that, Viserys. Or maybe it's the same.
I think they're the same. Both
they are the same.
And
Viserys.
Dany had her dragon that was Viserion.
Yeah, they were all ons at the end. Drogon.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Rhaegon.
Thank you,
yeah.
guys.
No worries.
So as we know, the Lords voted. The council decided that because Rhaenys is a woman, she could not rule. This was law. And Viserys is now the king. And then we cut to the 9th year of his reign, 172 years before Daenerys Targaryen is born and before the events of Game of Thrones as we know it. Actually, a few more years, probably she was 14 in that. So close to 200 years prior to the show Game of Thrones kicking off. What do you guys think about this opening scene? I loved seeing how grand everything seemed back then.
Loved
Yeah,
it.
definitely. I mean, we've seen Harrenhal in the original series, and that's like kind of like decrepit castle that, like, you know, Arya, she's like pretending to be the boy and like pouring the wine for Tywin, and he doesn't recognize who he is. Like, that's where it's just weird that this is the same place, but it just looks very different. And so yeah, it is cool to see a lot of these same settings, the dragon pit as well in this show that, you know, is also kind of in ruins when, you know, we see it in Game of Thrones, Song of Ice and Fire time. So yeah, it is a different era, and, you know, it's kind of at the height before what seems like the Dark Ages kind of hit later.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's really cool. Like I think I said earlier, you can see that they're just building up the castle and stuff, like King's Landing. Like, you can see like scaffolding and, you know, the throne room and all that kind of stuff. The knives are just like freshly added to this throne, because you can see that Viserys has just been like cut on his back by one of the knives. And actually, it was mentioned a lot in the OG books that a lot of people would get cut by the knives on the throne all the time, because these were like, though they don't look like they're real, they were real knives, right? So, or swords or whatever they were. So I like that there was that little touch that he got like nicked by a knife.
Yeah.
And, you know, it was just made probably, so makes sense.
Yeah, I thought just seeing the grandeur of everything was really exciting. Something that struck me, which I just kept saying it the first time I watched it, was just how grand the chandeliers were. I loved the chandeliers with just the flames, and those were just so cool. I just like very cool set design, and I feel like nice tweaks that even if those chandeliers existed in the Game of Thrones original series, I definitely did not notice them, and they seemed much more grand in this, so that was very cool.
Maybe they're just fresh now, you know.
Maybe they are.
Maybe they took them down, or they're just older. You know, it's 200 years.
Yeah. Yeah. It's really cool, I think, to see, you know, the same setting just in a different time period with a different family. It's like it takes you back to that show that we all were very, very invested in and loved for most of the time we had it. But it's just a different vibe. It's like the same but different. It's I know that sounds like a very silly basic thing to say, but it's like same and different all at the same time.
Yeah. No, I mean, I think same but different is like exactly what is appealing about the show. Because I think, like, if it was the same, then I wouldn't be watching, you know?
Yeah,
like,
we would have a problem.
Yeah. And if it's too different, then it's just, then it's like, what are you doing? I mean, I know I've heard now that they, listening to some behind the scenes stuff, that the pilot for the show that they originally shot was scrapped. And that was apparently scrapped, like, for some reasons, but the main reason that seems to be the consensus is that it was too different, that it was kind of like a just totally different tone and take, and maybe it'll be made in a few years or something. But for the first show after the debacle that was season 8 of Game of Thrones, they just felt like they had to go with something that was not too different and closer to quote unquote the same, just to kind of get people back in without it being kind of like taking a big shot at doing something different. So I liked it. I felt like it struck a really good balance, as, you know, between the same and the different in the season. I have my issues with this episode, which we'll get to, like, did mostly have to do with where it kind of connected with Game of Thrones. That's the part that kind of made me feel a little icky inside. But yeah, we'll get to that later.
Yeah, I'm excited to dig in on that for sure. So after this scene, we got cut to, I guess I don't want to say that it's present day. I guess it's the earlier time period of where the show is going to live. So that's in the 9th year of Viserys' reign. And we open with Rhaenyra riding her dragon. And that's when she goes to see her mother, Queen Aemma. And she is pregnant, very clearly having a bad pregnancy here. She's miserable, which is really unfortunate. Obviously, this sets the stage for the rest of the episode. But Rhaenyra seems very concerned already about her mother. And her mother says to Rhaenyra that the discomfort is how we serve the realm. We have royal wombs, you and I, and the childbed is our battlefield, and we must learn to face it with a stiff lip. So I think even just addressing a woman's place in the beginning of this episode. I feel like they're doing, I don't want to say that it's heavy-handed because I don't feel like it was. I feel like it was impactful. But they're being a little heavy with, this is a woman's role. Women don't rule. We don't fight. We're not knights. We are here to serve the realm by bearing children to rule, essentially.
Yeah, I feel like she's just kind of putting, not really squandering or squashing her hopes, but kind of just letting her know, like, this is how it is. So you need to prepare, like, for that this is going to be your life. Like, there's no way you're going to rule. So you just got to be ready to bear children for people. And knowing, like, the relationships with the Targaryen people, she very much might be on the throne at some point because of their bloodline and how they, like, marry each other or whatever. So, like, you know, that's just, like, that's her duty in a sense.
Yeah, I feel like I love that this feels like a story that's more about being a woman. Like, while Game of Thrones, of course, has not been shy with showing the brutality of what it's like to be, you know, a woman, to be poor, to make one bad decision and have horrible consequences follow that decision. Like, of course, they haven't shied away from that, but I feel like this feels, especially again going back to the prologue, like we're just getting narrated. Like, the first thing we hear about is that a woman's been passed over for the throne. Now, then the second conversation is, you know, how hard it is to, or that, you know, women have a specific role in society, especially royal women. And so and so they're not like preachy or something. Like, they're just showing, you know, they're just showing us what it would be like to be a woman in their world, of course, which reflects on our world. But that's, yeah, a little bit of a different story there.
Yeah, and I definitely have some thoughts on that for later. But yeah, I think, you know, I totally agree with you guys, and it feels like the patriarchy is ruling with such a heavy hand here that it almost feels like the Queen Aemma is telling Rhaenyra, just, there's not even a point to having these ambitions that maybe you have, because this is your role in society. Like, nothing's going to change that. That's who you are, and that's how you're serving the realm. Which is sad. And, you know, Rhaenyra gives me a little bit of a mix here of Arya and, you know, Daenerys vibes a little bit, maybe less so Daenerys and even more Arya. And a little bit of Sansa, I would say too, if we're comparing back to, you know, some of the characters that we know from the original series, which is what I'm doing right now for some reason. So, you know, I think, you know, Sansa was very polished and put together, and, you know, she felt very educated and smart, and, you know, Arya was more of an explorer and wanted to be out and see the world. And Daenerys was very strong in her convictions. And I feel like she's a really interesting combination of these three, you know, female characters that we got to know really well. She's like a very interesting combo of traits that they all have.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, I feel like,
haven't seen.
Yeah, I'm excited to see more. I know that there's going to be a different actress playing her. That's also going to color how the character is portrayed. So I'm intrigued for sure. She's kind of I feel like a little bit more of a blank slate for me than some of these characters started. Like, the first scene of Arya in that first episode, like, she's also trying to, like, I think she's like doing a balance thing or something, and Ned's talking to her also about, like, you know, you can tell she wants to be a warrior as well.
Yeah.
So more than even in the conversation, you're seeing it. So, I mean, we get Rhaenyra on a dragon back, which is, you know, a great image there to show that she's probably got some fighting chops there and isn't afraid to go to battle on that thing. But,
yeah,
but it is, she feels like character-wise a little bit more, I'm like, of a blank slate to start with for me.
It's just so interesting that, like, there's such contrast with the Targaryen house and how they, like, view women, because, you know, in one instance, like, when they were, like, fighting their way there, you know, before, they had women warriors on dragons and stuff, and then yet they have this whole thing with the, you know, choosing who's gonna rule, and they go with a male. Like, they decide that, but I guess it's because, you know, a war could have started if they, you know, didn't follow what the other kind of lords wanted. But then they just kind of continued it from there. But I feel like they're freaking dragons. They could just straight up be like, I don't care.
Right.
You know, so it's just like the contrast. So I feel like she's just carrying on this, like, Targaryen bloodline that you could totally see in Dany as a fighter. The problem is Dany really didn't have anyone to rein her in from her family, and I think ultimately that wasn't the best for her. But you know, she's surrounded by family. She's seen the women of the family and how strong they are and whatever. So she's just gonna, following her strong roots, I guess.
Mhm. Yeah.
Yeah, and it feels like, to me at least, it feels like this is a loving family. It seems
Yeah.
like Viserys really cares for his wife Aemma, that they care for Rhaenyra. It feels like, even though they're a smaller, seemingly knit family, it doesn't seem like Rhaenyra has any sisters. We know that she doesn't have any brothers. We learn later on that Aemma has lost many children, some stillborn, some passed after being born, some miscarriages that she's had. So she's had a lot of trouble reproducing, unfortunately, which is very sad. And she continues to put her body through this. So it does seem like they are a small, tight-knit family, but it does seem like there's a lot of love and care there, which is nice.
Yeah.
Even though we know that they're a little,
even with her uncle,
incestual.
who's like kind of like cuckoo as well, but like, they seem good too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's exactly what I was gonna say.
Yeah.
It's surprising that you can tell the relationship is very complicated between Daemon and the rest of
Yes.
Viserys's family there, but there is love. I mean, that the funeral scene, when he's asking Rhaenyra to say the words and to take over, like he's clearly has her interest in wanting her to like step up in that moment because everybody's looking to her. And I mean, I know things are going to get complicated and they're already complicated, but I do think like you can see that he's also, very much having that love, hate, family relationship, that definitely extends to him.
Yeah, keeping those old Valyrian traditions strong, it seems. I think that just keeps them closer. Like when they were speaking Valyrian to each other, it's like their
loved
own
that, by
little
the way.
conversation. Yeah, I loved when they
Loved
like
that.
broke out into Valyrian. I was like, oh yes, love this.
Yeah.
Yeah, so we can even go ahead and jump ahead to that. So we move forward from the scene with Rhaenyra and her mother, and we go to the council meeting. Rhaenyra is a little bit late. The king comments again how she stinks like dragon. And she acts as the cupbearer to this council meeting, and we really get to meet the king's court, or the king's council, for the first time. We meet Corlys. He's telling about this triarchy that has amassed on Bloodstone, and there are pirates, and he really wants to get this under control because it could have an impact to the ports. We hear that Daemon is the commander of the City Watch, but he does not show up to meetings very often. We meet Otto Hightower for the first time, who's the hand of the king. And like I had said a little earlier, he gives me big Tywin Lannister vibes here. He seems very ambitious. He seems very politically savvy. It seems like he's always thinking and has maybe his own agenda a little bit. So this is an interesting dynamic, I think. The king seems, Viserys seems a little bit... I think his ruling style seems like he's very lax, I guess, or he's very easily influenced by the people that he keeps around him, and he's not very strong. Like to me, it's very clear that he was not meant to be the leader, and Rhaenys was probably meant to be the leader that should have been, but because she was a woman, she was not put in that seat.
The queen,
and she should have been
the queen that never was.
Yes,
the queen that
yeah.
never was.
Exactly.
No, I agree. Like you can tell that. Like there's a conversation later because people aren't really happy with Daemon being the, like the leader. What is it?
The commander of the City Watch.
Commander of the City Watch. I was like, I know it's City Watch. I forget what the thing is called. Commander of the City Watch. But it like Otto kept like moving him around or telling him, oh, you need to move him off this thing. Oh, you need to move him off this thing. So he just kept listening to Otto at that point. Like it seemed like Otto was dictating like where to put him or whatever. Why does he need to be put anywhere? Like,
right.
He obviously doesn't need to be on any of these things because he's not good at it and he's hungry for power he somehow finds a way to get what he needs from it, and mess it up. So, it's to circle back, like Otto objective is very much like, yeah, it's very Tywin Lannister, but it's also very Littlefinger.
Yes.
Yeah.
The ambitions
For
are for
sure.
him and him only. His advancement and his advancement only. Right.
For sure. Yeah. Yeah, I'm getting Dick Cheney vibes from him. Like just
Yeah.
pulling the strings. He's not the number one guy. He's the number two guy, but he's the one that's clearly calling the shot. Viserys, a weak king, you know, even with the whole crime in the city thing.
Yeah.
Like I feel like they painted a picture pretty efficiently that he's,
Yeah.
you know, probably like seems, you know, we'll get into the one decision that he makes that shows that he's probably not completely a good person. But for the most part, you know, seems like a benevolent king. Like I don't think, you know, he's not really out for blood and you know, to conquer everything. He's probably just more interested in being beloved and having a good time and trying to have an heir, and those things take up his time and probably leaves the ruling for, you know, other people.
Yeah, it almost seems like he feels like he has these very, very big shoes to fill because the king prior to him, Jaehaerys, was ruling for 60 years and it was very prosperous. There was no war. It was very peaceful. And those are huge shoes to fill when you are ruling as a beloved king, when you're not necessarily the rightful heir. You were kind of voted in only because you were, you know, kind of a success, like a reasonable succession to the king, but you weren't his true male heir. So I'm sure there's some insecurities there. And we kind of see it come out, right? The main point of this meeting is to talk about this tournament that is being planned to announce the birth of Viserys' son, who is not born yet. We don't know if it's going to be a son, but we need an heir to the throne. And right now he doesn't have one because his wife has tried to deliver him an heir many times, and unfortunately it hasn't come to fruition because of a number of reasons, as we talked about. So the birth is imminent of this baby, and he's convinced that it's going to be a boy. So Rhaenyra's overhearing this. She obviously doesn't seem very happy as she's pouring the wine and serving the men around the council. But he believes that this is a boy and wants to announce it. And there's a boy in the queen's belly. And this is the whole kind of purpose of this meeting. And even the people on the council are kind of like, I don't know, maybe we're a little too soon in this. Maybe we should wait. The baby is not born yet. You don't know that it's an heir. But it seems like he just wants to posture a little bit and make sure people can see, like, nope, we have stability here. There's going to be another male after me, and I'm the rightful king, and this is the rightful heir.
Yeah, I feel like, again, weak spine, just wants the easy way out. You know, it's the easiest thing for him, so people won't be mad at him, and it'll all be figured out as if he has a son. Then he can just, you know, step back and not have to deal with anything.
Yeah, definitely. He just kind of, I think he's tired. Like he just wants this one thing to be off his checklist. Okay, this person's going to be taken over. The queen makes a comment like, imagine just like you're just born into rule. Like, this is just your thing now, like this little baby, right? Like, it's just like so outrageous, you know, that he's putting all of this on this like child. And
Right.
you know, they had this whole tournament and this whole like thing, you know, so ahead of time, you know, and I feel like it like Josh already kind of hinted at it before, like it kind of clouds his judgment for some things later, based on like he has to deliver on like this big thing that it could be a boy or whatever, right? So yeah.
So while this is going on, you know, after the meeting is over, Rhaenyra goes into the throne room, and Daemon is there sitting on the throne. And she says, you know, it's fine. And then she goes in and she speaks to him in Valyrian, and they have a very playful, you know, like we talked about, it seems like they care for each other. They have a very playful relationship. He tells her that he feels like the court is boring. He's really only here for the tournament. He believes that it's in his honor, as you know, the queen is not having a son, and they're announcing his you know, succession to the throne, essentially. And he brought her a necklace made of Valyrian steel, and he said, now we both have a piece of our ancestry. What was he? Do you guys know what he was referring to there when he says we both have a piece of our ancestry? Is he referring to sitting on the throne?
I think he's referring to Dark Sister, his sword, which is Valyrian steel.
Okay.
So now they both have Valyrian steel items.
Yeah, and I
like
think
that
the
name,
necklace, I think this
name.
necklace was also dark. It's also Dark Sister related as well, or it was worn by someone whose name I can't think of at this moment. But yes, he was referring to Dark Sister.
Got it.
His blade. And then her necklace. I think she also mentioned Dark Sister, but I don't know what that meant with by the necklace as well. But yeah. We'll have to look that up for the next time because I'm interested now.
Yeah, at the very least, they're both Valyrian steel, and so he's, we both got one.
We're there. I think the necklace was someone's necklace from history, so I think that's why it's important.
Makes sense. Yeah, I like this scene from them. I think this set a really good stage of their relationship with each other. They seem close, but he seems more rebellious. They have a good, he obviously, like we said, cares for her. She cares for him. They're playful. They clearly get along, but they like to sass each other a little bit, which is nice.
Can I just say, like, this is what Game of Thrones PTSD has given me, is this moment. I'm like, okay, are they flirting? Like, I don't know what's going on here.
Well, we know this family.
Yeah,
they
yeah.
could.
And
they
then
could be.
And then the other moment was when Corlys at the council that we already talked about, when he put his hand over the wine and said, "I don't want any." I was like, "Is he poisoning all of them? Are they all just going to die right now?"
Oh, God.
I don't like. We don't know. Anybody could die at any point. Anybody could fall in love with anybody at any point. That's what Game of Thrones has taught me about this world.
It's fair. I mean, it's fair. And what a flex that would be if just everybody in the council got poisoned in like the first 15 minutes of
the Red Council.
I don't know. I mean, that's not even the craziest thing that would have happened, in one of these shows.
It's totally true. It's totally true. I love that. I hope that we get some kind of like craziness this season. I think they'll deliver. I mean, we got some in this episode too, but not to that extent yet. But I'm sure we'll get something. Then we cut to Allison and Rayna outside, hanging out. I really like this relationship too. Speaking of in love, they have a flirty bestie vibe here. I don't know what the deal is. I don't know if we know officially what the deal is here, but they're definitely flirty besties for sure, at the least.
Yeah, I feel like, again, we've just been poisoned by they're real close, so they must.
Yeah, I love their love.
No, I think they just I feel like they were raised together. Like Otto Hightower is, very close to the king. They were probably just girls raised together. They hang out together all the time. It's her handmaiden. I feel like they're just like really close besties. You know what I mean? Like. Maybe
I don't think so.
Yeah,
man.
I just think they're close
vibes.
No.
Maybe there might be vibes, but Otto is not going to allow that nonsense.
I mean, people only do things they're allowed to do, right? That's what everybody in Westeros,
especially
does.
In Westeros.
Yeah.
But I don't know. I was definitely feeling like that's got to be something, but I mean, I could be wrong.
Such a George R. R. Martin thing to do, right? Just
or it could be something that's changed from what he, honestly,
that's
it could
true.
be something that's added for TV, and like he wrote this, and they're gonna go a little bit different direction. Yeah, but another thing, I was like, okay, I think this is a thing, but I'll call my shot. But if I'm wrong, I'm wrong.
No, I kind of agree with you. It feels like either way, they have a very close relationship, regardless of what it is. There's love there, whether it's like flirty love or it's just bestie love. There's definitely a lot of love between
them. Will it go anywhere? Who knows?
Who knows? Maybe. Yeah. Well, I'm rooting for it either way.
I don't know how old they are. Yeah, I'm trying to figure out how old they are.
Good call. We should probably figure out how old they are because.
Because I feel like I think we were talking about this in the pre-show, like the pre-season, but like I think she's supposed to be like 7 or something, but she is definitely not 7. Yeah, she's not. I think they did Rhaenyra. I think she's supposed to be. I think she's supposed to be like really young, if I remember correctly. So I feel like they did the fast forward age thing for her as well. Yeah. We'll have to look it up. I might be wrong. But
so maybe if she's 7, then I take back everything I said. They're just friends. But
listen, it changes, right? Like they did the same thing for Game of Thrones. Everyone was like, set up.
Yeah,
like,
Dany was 14. Jon was 14.
Jon's supposed to be 14. Like, Arya's like 11 or something, or maybe she's even younger. I think Sansa's like 12 or something, right? So
yeah,
I don't know. We'll have to look that up. But you could say the
Yeah.
flirty thing because I think they're teenagers in
Okay.
this adoption. So you're
Okay,
good.
good.
Yeah.
Josh, we're less creepy now.
Yeah,
They're teens. We're good.
I'll also say it did seem a little one-sided from Rhaenyra's direction towards Allison. If I was gonna say, if there was unrequited love, I feel like it might not be reciprocated by Allison, but
Oh,
that's
really?
just-
Okay, interesting. I got the vibe that Allison was very she cared a lot for Rhaenyra, and I feel like she really was looking out for her a lot, where Rhaenyra is a little more not reckless necessarily, but she's just more bold in her personality, where Allison, obviously you could see throughout the episode, she was picking at her skin around her thumbs when she got nervous, and she was biting like the skin around her nails or her nails. So she seems just very anxious in general. Which is,
Yes.
I'm interested to get to know her a little bit more. I'm liking her character so far. I feel like she's a little more nuanced than what we usually see in the show. So
Yeah.
I'm looking forward to seeing more from her. We see then that Viserys has a wound on his back, and it looks pretty gnarly and pretty nasty. They don't know what it is. It's not healing. It will not heal. And it seems to come from a cut sitting on a throne. Okay, Glances in the chat does say it's the 9th year of King Viserys Targaryen's reign. So does that mean
Okay.
she's 9, or was she born before that?
Yeah,
She might
they
have been
did-
born before
Born in
that.
97. She was
They-
born in 97, I think.
In the prologue,
Yeah.
the Emma is pregnant, and so I'm assuming that's with
Oh.
Rhaenyra.
Okay, so they're 9.
But unless it's a miscarriage situation, one of her miscarriages. But
Yeah.
yeah.
Oh,
In
yeah,
the
that could
his-
be. That could be.
In the history book, she was born in 97. Like literally just
97. 9/7.
And I think 100 it was his 9th year of reign, right? Was it 100 was the year that he was named?
I don't know.
I'm trying to remember. I'm trying to do the math. I looked up the history. 111 was the tourney, I think. But 111 yeah, I don't know. Oh, actually, I don't know. I think it's all out of whack. We'll have to look at Yeah, we'll have to. It says it says 105 the mother died in childbirth, right?
So that would make her 12-ish.
Yeah, so she's young.
Alright,
So she's
okay.
not 7. but
Yeah,
she's
I'm
like-
reading here that she's supposed to be 11. Yeah.
But she's definitely older than 11 on the show. I feel like they
Yeah.
raised her age just a little bit. So I'm gonna go
Yeah.
14, like Danny.
I'm fine with 14.
Yeah.
They could be flirty besties.
No one
at
has
14.
confirmed.
Yeah. Okay.
All
Good
right.
to know. Good to know. So this wound, it refuses to heal. Seems to have come from a cut sitting on the throne. It's gross. And Otto says we have to keep this quiet, and the Maester wants to cauterize it. And he says, fine, yeah, cauterize it, whatever you have to do. Obviously, there's going to be more to this wound. Something is going on with him. They say that it seems that stress might be making it worse. Feels like there's more to this gnarly wound on this guy's back that they're keeping secret than just
I feel like
cut
it's
from the throne.
foreshadowing or something, like the
Yeah.
way they're doing it. They're like, don't tell anyone about this wound. Like, why would you not tell anyone about a little nick from the sword?
Right.
And I wonder what, I'm not that far in it, so I can't really I'm like, I don't have any
Yeah.
spoilers for it.
Mhm.
But I wonder if they've gone to like Old Town, right? I think
Right.
they said, to try to figure out like what's going on. I wonder maybe this is the first occurrence of grayscale or something that's gonna pop up.
Oh,
I wonder.
that would be interesting.
Yeah, I kind of I took it more as like that it's like a bad sign for the king to be
That
wounded
could be
by the
one
throne.
too. Yeah.
That it's like almost like
He
a
should be a
PR thing.
warrior.
Yeah. That like, okay, he's sitting and he's wounded by a chair,
That
like
too.
that's yeah.
Yeah.
And
It's a
I do
sharp
think
chair.
yeah, and so also I was thinking, talk about foreshadowing, like it's on his back, and of course it's by his sword, so it does like I don't know anything, but I feel like he's gonna get stabbed in the back. That's what
Yeah.
it sounded like to me.
Could be an option too.
That is a good call. That's a good call. He goes then after this scene to go see Emma. She's in the bath. And she said it's the only place that she can find comfort. And again, we get, more about how she's just miserable in this pregnancy. It's horrible. She says it's miserable with the way she's feeling. She wouldn't be surprised if she hatched a dragon. And it does seem like, she's talking a little bit about the tournament. And I think she says something along the lines of like, you can't put a cock on a baby that doesn't exist already, something like
Yeah.
that. And he's like, no, I had a dream and it was clearer than a memory. And then this baby was born wearing Aegon's iron crown. He heard the sounds of war and placed his son on the throne, and the dragons roared as one. We know the plot of this show without knowing exactly what happens is a civil war because of the succession. Do we think that that's really what this dream was, is that this baby was born and ended up causing a war between this family? Maybe that's what the dream is. Again, I don't know if this dream ever is spoken of again, but it seems like this was a little bit of foreshadowing here.
Honestly, like knowing, like learning what we do at the end of the episode, I feel like it's like a premonition or something like that. Like it's very common for people to have that in the Game of Thrones universe. But yeah, I think I agree with you, Katie. I think it was like, you know, the baby on the throne causes like all of this stuff to go down, right? The baby that's supposed to be there, right? So
Yeah.
you know, I agree with you what you're thinking.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's immediately where my mind went.
Yeah.
Talking about the other prophecy that's referenced later in the show, which is almost completely wrong in and of itself from what we do know will happen in the Game of Thrones story. Like, it's not a Targaryen sitting on the throne that defeats the White Walkers. It's not even a Targaryen who kills the Night King, like, which is, you know, is what he says the
Very
prophecy
true.
says. It's those two
Should've
things.
been.
That a Targaryen's going to be on the throne and a Targaryen's going to kill the Night King. Now, those things kind of happen, right? Jon Snow kind of leads to both, you know, the death of the Night King and also, like, you know, the rallying of all the kingdoms against them. So again, you can kind of squint and see that it's true, but I feel like this is another prophecy that's like mostly not true, but like maybe if you tilt your head a little bit, you can kind of see how it kind of does come true.
Yeah, for sure. No, I totally agree with you. And it seems like I don't recall much, and maybe it's just a bad memory on my part, much talk about Targaryens having dreams or premonitions in the original series. Like, you know, Dany obviously, you know, talked a lot about being on the throne and wanting the throne and it being hers, but did she ever really dream about it? Is this a thing with the Targaryens? Do they have premonitions?
It's not
like
really
this?
a Targaryen thing. It's more of just like a general
They just
people
believe in
have
dreams?
it in Game of Thrones thing. The only time she really had anything was when she went to the place that stole her dragons, which I can't think of right at this
I can't remember what it's called either.
Where they had her dragons or whatever, and she had all those dreams about her going on the throne, and it's like snowing, but really it was ash.
Yeah,
but
those were almost like illusions, right?
Like,
From
those were illusions,
yeah.
But like like, you know, if you look at like, you know, the Raven, like with Bran and whatever, like it's just like a thing that happens. So it might not have been the Targaryen who told him what the prophecy was, a Targaryen who told him, but it's a thing that's common that happens in Game of Thrones, whether they're true or not. Because if you looked at like Melisandre and some of the stuff she was saying, she was totally incorrect for the most part. So, you know, you take everything they say do you take everything that pops up in a premonition or a dream with a grain of salt, you know? But, you know, in that time, they probably it was so vivid. Like, that was just the way to go. Yeah.
Totally. So Emma does tell him that this is her last baby. She lost one in the cradle. She had 2 stillbirths, 2 pregnancies that ended before their term. She's given 5 and twice as many years, and she knows it's her duty, and she's sorry that she failed him, but she's mourned all of the dead children that she can. So this is just more foreshadowing for what's to come. Unfortunately, in this episode, pretty tragic stuff that is going to come very soon. But we do get to know a little bit more about just seemingly like what the Queen's life has been thus far, which doesn't seem like it's been great, unfortunately.
Yeah, it does not.
Yeah, bummer. Definitely a bummer. So then we cut to the City Watch and we see Daemon getting everybody riled up. They're all in their armor. They're all like banging on stuff. He's giving like extreme, and I don't know if you felt this, Ramsay vibes here. I got like big Ramsay energy from this scene where he's, you know, he said when I took...
Why Why you say that?
Yeah, I don't know. But he was telling them that, when he took over as the commander of the watch, they were craved mongrels, starving and undisciplined. And the city's fallen into squalor and crime has been allowed to thrive. So they're going out and they're fucking some shit up here, and they're just gonna go take the criminals and basically just dismember everybody. They cut some balls off, they chop off some heads. They're just putting on a huge display in the middle of King's Landing for any criminal or anybody that thinks they might start committing some crimes. They're like, yeah, we're gonna cut your dick off in the middle of the city here if you do that, so maybe don't.
Those gold cloaks, they're trouble.
Yeah, this is pretty brutal.
Yeah, I don't know how the rest of King's Landing feels about the stop and frisk policy that just got instituted without their consent, but
not great.
It's interesting because the lasting legacy is that the what do you call it, the City Watch or whatever, the gold cloaks forever have gold cloaks after this, like including when we see them in Game of Thrones. And so it's just, I don't know. So it's just interesting that this is their origin. It's just like, we have to just start from meet chaos with brutality. And I'm sure that fixed everything. So
I feel like Daemon just has no boundaries. Like, I think his like purpose is there, but his execution is always just like so over the top.
Yeah.
Like, he just doesn't understand like where to stop. Like, he's just such a loose cannon. He's so just like could care less about like what right and wrong is for the most part. Even with like his like, he has like a wife. He's like, yeah, whatever. Like, nice to know her, whatever. Traveling with a mistress, like hanging out in brothels or whatever. Like, he could just care less about anything. Like, I feel, and I'm not sure how old Daemon is here either, but like I feel
13.
like he might.
I'm just kidding.
Yeah. I feel like he might be pretty young, honestly. Like, I don't think he's like I think his brother, I don't know how much older his brother is, but I feel like he might, like, I'm not sure, I'd have to check, but I feel like he might be in his 20s or
probably
early 30s, and he's just like chilling. So
yeah,
who knows?
I feel like it is a little bit more foreshadowing that, like, again, just what I'm picking up on is that, like, when there is a moment of a decision or chaos or whatever, like fight or flight, like he's a guy that fights. Like, we see that in the joust situation. He yields, very reluctantly. And then, but he's also the guy that's, when he has the advantage, he's going to be found in the brothel. When he can get away with it, he's going to be taunting his opponent in the arena for everybody to see. So he's definitely a hothead, and somebody who also then, I think, his one kind of tactic when his back's against the wall is just, fight. So if I'm going to be in charge of the police force, they're going to be brutal, and we're just going to, chop some appendages off.
Yeah, it almost feels to me too like this is coming from a place of where he feels like maybe he needs to prove himself, and this is the way that he's going to do it, is just going completely over the top at every possible moment. He does it here, he does it at the tournament. Like, I don't know if it's that he doesn't want to look weak or wants to seem like, eventually when he is the heir, if he is the heir, that he'll rule more firmly. But it also, to me, points to the king just being a very weak ruler. Like, if this is the point that needs to be proven because he's let crime thrive and there's been no real order, again, it just kind of shows that Viserys is a weak king, and is just kind of just like chilling. Who knows what he's up to? We don't really know. So we cut immediately to the council after this, and Otto is pissed about this. He is not happy. He said this goes against the law, and he wants to keep order, and Daemon just wants to instill fear in people. So he's pissed. And again, Viserys is he's like waffling in between. He's like, well, he does want to keep order, but we don't want to rule with fear. It's like he's not taking a firm stance on anything.
Nah, he's just like could care less about any of this. Like, he literally went into the streets and chopped people's like body parts off, and he's just like nonchalantly like, you shouldn't do that. That's kind of not you're not the way. So maybe just don't do that next time, or we'll take it away from you. Like, hello.
Yeah.
What?
He wants decisions to be made for him. Like, I mean, I
Yeah,
think that's
that's
really what it comes
100%
down
it.
to. Like, yeah, he doesn't want to have to decide between Daemon or Rhaenyra. Like, he doesn't want to have to, judge Daemon and punish him or whatever. So I just feel like he wants those decisions to be taken care of so he could just, not be the bad guy in, any situation.
Yeah, for sure. And it just seems like he's very almost unsure of himself. But like this was no joke. Like the City Watch, I think they said they filled up 2 hand carts of just body parts. And we saw like heads getting chopped off. Like it was pretty rough. But Corlys agrees with Daemon and supports him in this. Corlys is a pretty strong Daemon supporter here. He's like a Daemon truther. He's just like, yeah, no, this is awesome. Cut some more dicks off. I'm here for it.
I feel like Corlys is just close with the Targaryens, and also like his wife is a Targaryen too. So I feel like he's just like, yeah, whatever. Order.
Yeah. I also my interpretation at the time was just more that he actually liked the decision more than he cared for Daemon, like whatever about Daemon, but just more that like they did the job that needed to be done. This has been chaotic. I don't know, again, he's the guy that's not drinking wine at these meetings because he's business. And so I just feel like he's this ambitious, get down to business guy, no nonsense. Like, if the streets are messy, sure, cut off some limbs. Did it get the job done? If yes, then I'm good with it.
Yeah. Yeah, totally. I mean, we hear him support Daemon a little later on too when it comes to, being the successor. But then he kind of waffles a little bit and is like, well, we know another heir, but that we could talk about that when we get to that point. But, Daemon comes in and he's sitting there and this is where we really see Otto and Daemon going back and forth. They very clearly do not like each other. And it's very clear that Otto is very uncomfortable with Daemon being there. And part of it could be that Otto's just super measured and ambitious and thinks through things and kind of is playing a chess game here, and Daemon is just a total wild card. But also Daemon's kind of an asshole. And so is Otto. I mean, Otto's kind of an asshole too. They're both assholes in different ways.
I think the main thing here, like the point you have about the wild card, he absolutely does not want Daemon to be in charge, because if Daemon's in charge, he has no control over him whatsoever. So I feel like he's spiraling.
Yeah, totally. Totally.
Yeah.
And this is where Otto is like, you should be in the Vale with your wife. Like, why are you even here? And then it just kind of goes off the rails where he's like,
I hate my wife. Yeah.
Yeah. So we do get a final warning from Viserys, and is like, no, nothing like last night. Keep order, but I don't want to see any more displays last night. But then he does say that maybe a new City Watch might be a good thing, and that King's Landing has been in decline since, he says, his grandmother passed away. I don't know who his grandmother is. Was she like a figurehead of some kind? Figurehead, I guess maybe isn't the right term.
Okay, so he was the cousin, right? So his so that would have been his uncle, I think. The king was his uncle.
Yeah. But they would have the same grandmother. Yeah.
I think there was like...
Well, they all have the same everything, right? Because they're all just...
That's inbred. Also true.
Right? Yeah. Yeah, I'm trying to think of who the grandmother is. But it could also be like the grandmother is also like, the king's... Because the king... Okay, so the king that passed away, his wife, I think, was his sister. So like... And they ruled together. Like, she helped him rule the whole time. So his grandmother might have been the king's wife, who's also like, you know what I mean? So I think it might have been like she was, his wife or whatever.
I wouldn't be surprised by any of that. I feel like it seems like a passing comment, but I was like, am I supposed to know who she is? Because I don't.
Yeah, I don't think maybe you'll find out later. Like maybe it'll go a bit, but actually no, it wouldn't have make sense, because then he would have been his son. So like, I don't know I don't know anymore. Like the
I know it's like
I've read it so many times. I'm just like, huh? Like,
we need one of those boards where it's like we're just tying
like which grandmother? Yeah. like, which cousin Targaryens are you related to? I
Right.
don't know. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, you would think it'd be easier if your maternal and paternal grandmother were the same person.
Right.
But actually, it makes the whole thing tougher.
Makes it a little more complicated for us to follow.
Yeah. So I don't know.
Same. No idea.
Yeah.
Then we cut to a scene of Daemon. He's, I guess, at a brothel. It seems like he's in a brothel. And he's hooking up with his mistress, and he's having trouble getting to completion here because he's obviously very distracted. And she's just like, "What can I do for you?" Whatever. But it's clear that she knows what's going on. She obviously is very trusted. He confides in her. She says, "The king can't replace you." She's giving him a little bit of a pep talk. So this is more than just a one night stand here.
Yeah, no.
And we see her again multiple times in this episode. I think we have her name. I think we talked about her in the first episode. Her name is Mysaria, I believe.
Mysaria.
Yeah. So we'll be seeing her again at some point. Then we cut to the tournament. So this is a pretty wild event here. As soon as it starts, Viserys is talking about, we're here to announce my heir, and I'm here to announce that my wife has begun labor. Let the jousting begin. And then all hell kind of breaks loose. Then I like this because we see a lot of houses that we've seen before, which is cool. We see some Baratheons. And a Baratheon knight actually asks for Rhaenys's fortune and her flower crown. And Otto says to Viserys, "You could have Baratheon's tongue for that, for asking for that from your family." He said, "Tongues will not change the succession, let him wag," which I thought was really interesting because obviously we know what happens a few hundred years later, that the Baratheons do unseat the Targaryens. So this was a little interesting nugget I saw, and I was like, "Ooh, I like that."
Actually, I think the reason why he was going to cut out his tongue is because he said the queen that never was.
Yes. That as well, yeah.
And they were like, what? And that's why they mentioned the succession thing, because they're like, yo, why are they talking about your your throne right now? But it's true. She should have been ruling, honestly. Yeah, just throwing it right in his face and then asking for the favor. The favor, I think it doesn't even matter, but it was like, why are you throwing that in there that I shouldn't be king right now? Like, that's rude.
Yeah, especially compared, it's interesting, like, he doesn't care if it comes from some random knight, to talk about the queen who never was, but as soon as it's
my cousin,
his brother, as soon as his brother though says, an heir for a day, a similar phrase about succession and kind of subversive, then it's
off
like, okay, that is, that's a line in the sand, and you're out. But I mean, it also is on the other side of this trauma that he's about to experience, which probably changes his perspective as well.
Yeah, for sure. Definitely for sure. So anything huge to talk about here? We do meet Sir Criston Cole, who we later find out is a Dornishman. He is Dondarrion's steward, but he's his common-born son, but there's not much else known about him. I assume we'll hear more about this man because they made a pretty big deal about him and how well he performed in this tournament. But basically, I mean, all hell breaks loose in this tournament. People are smashing each other's faces in. People are getting murdered. People are vomiting on the side of the whatever the track. But we do see Daemon come in, and he chooses his first opponent, and he chooses Alicent's brother, Otto Hightower's oldest son, and Daemon's just a fucking dick here, really, and it's just very uncool. He also asks for Alicent's fortune, and takes her flower crown. It's just like this guy is really just rubbing on his face, all in it.
Yeah, the jousting was cool. I mean, it was just cool to see like a tournament in all its glory, and just in general, again, it shows that this is a little bit of a different era than what we saw in the original series, where this is all pomp and circumstance. There's a full stadium. I mean, it just looks very different than the kind of like brief instances we saw of like these kinds of tournaments in the other series.
Yeah, we saw it in King's Landing in season 1, right? And it was significantly smaller than this.
Yeah.
It was way more chill, even though if you read like the novellas and whatnot, like there's always something going down at these things, like, so it's just like so funny and it's so brutal, but I like how, I forget who said it, I think it was Rhaenys, where she was like these people haven't even seen a battlefield. Like, this is like the only thing that gets brutal for them, because there hasn't been any wars or nothing going on, right? So whereas Game of Thrones, it's just like the whole time. But for them, they've never really seen anything. So, they don't actually know how to fight.
I wrote that down as a note. She said, and the day grows ugly. And Corlys says, I wonder if this is how we should celebrate the newborn king, with wanton violence. And she basically says, none of these men know real war. We expect them to act with honor and grace. It's a surprise that a war didn't break out at the first sight of blood.
Yeah.
Because they've never had to want for anything, basically. They've just lived in this prosperous world that has been ruled by the Targaryens for the last
100%.
70 or so years now at this point. I thought that was very, very interesting and pretty cool. Yeah. But Daemon resorts to some pretty cheap tricks here. He trips the horse, which is a total bummer, and the crowd is not happy about it. The horse gets up though, and so does Otto's son. So everybody's okay. But this is another area where Allison is kind of freaking out. She's picking at her fingers, and she's not feeling good about the situation here.
Yeah, dirty.
Yeah.
Kick him out
once again.
Again, I feel like he's got one move. If his back is against the wall, he's just going to escalate the violence. He's just going to attack.
Yeah. Once again, we see him just going way over the top when it's not necessary.
Yeah.
Yeah. And in between the tournament, we cut to Queen Aemma giving birth, and everything is awful here. The baby is breached. She's screaming. She's in a ton of pain. Otto comes down, or the maester comes down and whispers to Otto. Otto whispers to the king, and he goes and he is with his wife. He leaves the tournament, and he stays there to support her. And this is just interstitched between some of the brutality at the tournament and how it starts just getting more and more violent, and how her birth just continues to get more and more painful and terrible and bloody for her. So the maester eventually pulls Viserys aside and says that there comes a time where the father has to make an impossible choice, and he has to either sacrifice one of them or lose them both. So, Viserys is like, oh, there's a chance that we can save the child. And I mean, that really seems to be, he's obviously very upset about this situation. And it is obvious, as we talked about earlier, that he loves his wife and there is love there. But he obviously is putting stock in his heir above his wife. And he chooses to try and save the child. And unfortunately, this is a very medieval version of a C-section. The technique cuts into the womb and takes the infant out. And the queen will most definitely die of blood loss. There's no question that she's going to be saved.
Fool.
Yeah.
Yeah. You have to wonder if she would have survived this. I mean, the maester is saying that she wouldn't have, and that the baby also would have passed. I mean, how do they know? I don't know.
You gotta take the chance at this point. Like, if your wife isn't the best at, carrying babies to term or whatever, like the others haven't survived. So at the end of the day, it's another decision. It's another decision that he doesn't have to make, which is his succession. So he chose that over, just taking the chance on any of that, right? So, he's just being selfish there. I feel. I'm sure he loves his wife, but I guess not enough to have to deal with having to figure this out like before, like his uncle had to before. So who knows? But at least I would, at least let it happen.
Yeah, let it play out. Maybe as I mean, obviously she's very clearly in pain and suffering. Yeah. But this is pretty horrible. I mean, he goes to the bed and she has no clue what's going on, and then they just start taking. She kind of realizes and she's begging no. I mean, this was really, really difficult for me to watch. Both times that I watched the episode, and I think a lot of it. There's a political climate here in the United States that just wants pretty much all of us to end up this way on a bed, getting our stomachs cut open, regardless of the health of the mother, unfortunately. So I think that made it hit a little harder for me. But this was a rough scene for sure.
Yeah. No, it was brutal. I mean, I didn't watch it on the second rewatch.
I fast forwarded through it the second time.
Yeah. I mean, I liked the juxtaposition of this happening with the jousting, the tournament. It called back to her quote, which is going to be her pretty much defining quote, right, for the series. which is that the death or the childbed is the battlefield for us, and so it was like a literal, I mean not a literal battle, but a play battle, and then her actually dying. So it's like one, again, it was like a joke, or again a play battle, and then like something that's supposed to bring life, and then that's death, and then there's something that's supposed to be filled with death, but it's actually just kind of like a tournament for people to enjoy. So it was like this weird, I don't know, twist upside down version of both sides of that experience for the men of nobility and the women of nobility. So I thought it was very well done in that sense, but yeah, I mean, it was really hard to watch in a way that there hadn't been a scene that was like, you can compare this to in Game of Thrones. Of course, there's like the red weddings and brutal murders and stuff. And there's also a pregnant woman who dies in that scene. And that's the closest that you can compare it to, but it just was done so differently. And I do think that this did, for me, show that we are in a different era as a society, like than when Game of Thrones started, because as brutal as this was, it wasn't like that, like weird, like, and this was the most difficult thing to watch. I feel like in Game of Thrones in the beginning, it was a lot of this like casual rape and violent sexual violence and stuff that just kind of was cavalierly touched on. Like this, as brutal as this was, like they very much, I felt like, didn't treat it cavalierly at all. And I appreciated that at the very least, that like this was shown for what it was and how horrible it was, but it wasn't just kind of this random side story or something. Like this was very much given its time and in the show and in this first episode to make us really feel the horrific violence that she's experiencing.
Yeah, I completely agree with you. The only thing I can think back to that was similar, almost different in content, but similar in feeling was Sansa's wedding to Ramsay, which was horrible. But I think you're totally right about the original series. It's almost like they put in this like shock porn throughout the whole series. So it took a lot of the gravity away from some of the horrific sexual violence that they portrayed. That was a very big thing for D&D back then. It seemed like they were really into it, and I think they received a lot of criticism towards the later half of the series in some of these areas where they diverted away from the books that didn't. I think there was Jaime raping Cersei next to Joffrey, which didn't take place in the books, and that was a completely unnecessary scene, and they received a lot of criticism for that. Same with Ramsay and Sansa. That did not happen in the books. I don't even believe that they got married in the books. So it's just that was unfortunate that they I thought he married the friend that wasn't in the
Oh yeah, they switched.
It was
them
a
out.
different character, right?
They switched,
but
them
did
out.
he think it was her or something? Maybe something like that. Again, I didn't
think
read
it was her. They swapped her out for someone who they thought was. Oh wait, no. I think he did marry Sansa. Maybe they thought the friend was Arya or something, but I think he actually married Sansa. I can't remember. I read that book.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know.
2011.
100%.
It's fine. After the show came
happening.
out, it's like, let's just not.
Everything's
think about that
blank. Yeah. I feel like it was actually Sansa because I think it really threw me. Actually, no, it wasn't Sansa. You're absolutely right. It was.
Yeah, I just remember there being a lot of outrage about what they put Sansa's character into and how they moved her character into this storyline where she just faced all of this trauma that was unnecessary for her. But I think, the way that they portrayed this, it was almost, I don't want to say tasteful because this is not a tasteful situation, but it wasn't shocking in the way that former Game of Thrones, scenes were shocking. It was almost shocking in the way that it wasn't graphic. They didn't show a lot of it. They did a really great job, Josh, to your point, like with the juxtaposition between the joust and the tournament and this scene. And I feel like it hit home harder than some of the things that we saw in the original series because they were just so flagrant about like, here it is. This is just violence and gore just for the sake of violence and gore.
Yeah. Well, and again, I feel like this first episode was about being a woman in this world. And so this was that to the extreme. And so it didn't feel like it was out of nowhere, or it felt thematically like just in line with what the picture that they're starting to paint, in the first few scenes of the show, and then continuing, just right up to the edge here with this scene. So again, it just felt, it just felt different than some of those early Game of Thrones scenes that just were like, this just feels unnecessary, you know. And
Yeah,
I just had a totally different reaction watching it, as
Totally.
hard as it was to watch.
Yeah, I totally agreed.
totally.
And I thought this was interesting as well because the baby comes out crying, and the maester kind of like looks at, and he's like, you know, congratulations on your son. And this was maybe the hardest part, where they, you know, panned away from the baby and we just see Emma laying on the bed just covered in blood. It's just a bloody, awful mess all over the place. She obviously died very painfully and from blood loss. And then we hear the baby crying, and then we also see Daemon kind of celebrating his win prematurely, and it feels like Viserys is happy that it's a boy but upset about his wife. Daemon is celebrating this tournament win, but he eventually loses. Viserys loses his son. It's like everybody, the Targaryens, are just taking L's left and right here.
Yes.
And it's just very interesting that they both were, I don't want to say Viserys was celebrating because he really wasn't, but he was happy to hear that it was a son and that his dream came true and he had an heir. And then we learned that baby was only alive for a few hours.
Yeah. I don't know if a joke is appropriate at this moment, but I was like, oh,
Okay,
this reminds me of Handmaid's Tale, and I was like, oh, I feel like Emma is she's of Viserys. If you remember, if you've ever seen Handmaid's Tale,
Yes.
where
Handmaid's
their
Tale.
names, their names are just their husbands' names, but with like of in front of
good.
it, because they're just of their husbands. So she's
Mhm,
basically
mhm.
just of Viserys, you know,
Yeah.
Emma at the end of the day, and yeah. Anyways, just I felt
Very
like
much
very
that.
similar to this
Handmaiden.
Handmaid's Tale. Yeah.
Yeah,
Um.
it's rough.
Yeah.
Rough stuff. Being a woman sucks. Just gonna put it out there. I mean, it's great, but it also sucks. We do see before the tournament is over that Sir Criston Cole wins, and he asks for Rhaenyra's favor. And like I said a little earlier, he's Dornish, and everyone's like, "Oh, he's a Dornishman." I don't know. Maybe we'll see this guy later. He seemed to be. They make a big impact. I don't know what his impact is going to be later on, but he does seem. I don't know if we know, because I know obviously Daenerys had a good relationship with you know, the Martells. Back in the original series, I think the Martells were married to one of the Targaryens, or no, Rhaegar was married to a Martell.
Yeah.
And that's who the
I'm
mountain-
sure.
His
Yeah.
wife. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah, so they were married, and it was someone's sister or something like that. Was it? No, it wasn't Doran's sister. I can't remember.
It was Oberyn's sister.
Oberyn's sister.
Yeah. Pedro Pascal. Yeah. Oberyn.
Yeah,
his
Oberyn.
sister.
Yeah.
Mhm.
So, yeah, that was a mess there. Actually, in the books, it's so funny how they just like cut out whole characters in the books, but like his son it was Doran Martell's son went to meet Dany.
Right. And he wasn't in the show at all, right?
He wasn't in the show at all. So he took this whole voyage to go meet Dany to try to like win her hand in marriage. And he's like, I'm going to tame a dragon. And then he just gets burned to death. I was like, I feel like this would have been great. Like,
Rough.
but they were like, oh, he just gets burned to death. So let's just like cancel this, right?
Yeah. Oops.
Yeah, whatever, it's fine. But yeah, so I think they tried to do that again in the books to connect them again, but it did not work out.
Yeah, I wonder if, I don't know, I'm sure there's a Game of Thrones historian out there that knows where the, you know, the Dornish and the Martell relationship started getting fostered with the Targaryens, but I don't know, is this the first? Maybe, who knows? It's 200 years before. I'm sure we'll see this guy again.
Well, they're
that's
kind
what
of
it feels like to me.
Southerners, right? I feel like the
Mhm.
Southerners and the Easterners are like kind of this like different breed in general, like, you know, so maybe they just relate. I can't remember if they would like land. No, I think the history said that they would land in like Dragonstone and stuff. I don't know if it said that they would go to down to Dorne and stuff as well, but I'll have to like read back.
Yeah, it's pretty interesting. We'll see.
Yeah.
I'm curious to see what happens from this guy.
Mm-hmm.
But from there, you know, everybody starts to kind of get up and panic a little bit. Something obviously goes wrong in that court area of the tournament. And the next thing we do is we cut to the funeral, and we see Emma on a pyre, and she's prepped for I wrote burial, but she obviously is not buried for the ceremony, the funeral. And it's at first we only see her, and then we pan down and we see a little baby also wrapped and ready for this funeral ceremony. So we know that this baby didn't survive, obviously, and Viserys is clearly beside himself and not really in a place where he is able to conduct this ceremony or make the the call to say Dracarys and light them on fire. And Daemon is here, and he approaches Rhaenyra, and he's seemingly comforting to her, but like also a voice of reason. Like, this is probably the most measured that he was in the episode. And he says in Valyrian, they're waiting for you. And she says, I wonder if during those few hours my brother lived, if my father finally found happiness. And he said to her, your father needs you now more than he ever has. And she says, I'll never be a son. So she's obviously just very beside herself that she lost her mother, who obviously she had a good relationship with. It's just a really sad situation. And she's clearly expected to be very strong here. And she kind of looks back at her father and sees that he's just in no place to be able to get the dragon to do what the dragon needs to do. So she kind of steps up and she does it. This was a really sad scene. Costumes were great though.
Yeah.
They looked great.
The whole dragon scene was even good with the fire, and it just made it. Although, can we just mention the dragon scenes were like really great?
Yeah, they were. They really were. We haven't talked much about the dragons, but the dragon scenes were great.
I just wanted to mention that they're very present, and I'm very here for it. But yeah, like it's a really sad moment there, but it just shows like how strong she is and how she would actually make an amazing ruler, because even during something like this, like during a grieving period, she's actually able to pull herself together and just, do what needs to be done at the end of the day. And even her father can't do that. So
right. And he's the king. And he can't even pull it together.
Yeah, exactly.
Again, just another scene of him waffling. And then, another scene of Daemon in the midst of a chaotic moment. He steps forward, but he does it thoughtfully this time and pushes Rhaenyra to the front. And yeah, I think what I'm getting from her person, here is that she's somebody who's probably reluctant to step into the spotlight, but is going to be thrust into it, obviously by the end of the episode. But yeah. So it was a touching moment. I thought it was good to see another scene of Daemon and Rhaenyra where it wasn't just like me questioning, are they in love with each other? But just some genuine, connection that they definitely have. Because, I get the sense that they're going to end up on the wrong side or on different sides of things here. So it's nice to see that they, in this quiet moment where only they understand each other's language, literally, like, that they're connected that way.
Yeah, especially for a 7-year-old. I mean, she's really, no, I'm just kidding. But no, I think, to your point of them being in love with each other, at the tournament, she is very amused by him. And he's, he's flaunting himself all over the place. And she's just like, So I could see there. I mean, maybe she's just flirty in general. I don't know. She's got flirty vibes with everybody, maybe. I don't know. But from there we cut to a very late or seemingly like urgent council meeting. And the king immediately is asking where Rhaenyra is, and Otto is like, nope, this is urgent. We need to talk right now. And the king does not know what this is about. And he says it's a matter of his heir. And then we get a little contentious. Corlys is like, well, he has an heir. And then we just argue a little bit back and forth about Daemon being the heir. Corlys is in support. Some of the other people on the council are not. Some of the maesters are saying, if we leave him in power, that they fear for the stability of the realm. Otto says this, and it's just a back and forth. And this is again where we learn Daemon has been in charge of a number of different things, and Otto has kind of vetoed every single one. And he's like, this is a half measure. He just needs to get out of here. And we learned that Daemon is actually listening to this conversation take place, like I don't know if he's in the hallway or in the walls or wherever he is, but he's eavesdropping.
He's in the walls for sure. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And this is the first place where we hear that someone brings up Rhaenyra as the potential of a successor. We also hear Corlys says, well, others have a claim like Rhaenys, and then everyone's like, okay, bro, like, let's relax.
Yeah.
Like,
Did you hear about
but
my
pipe down.
wife?
Yeah,
Like,
my wife, she has a son.
we
And
have
they're like, okay.
children.
That was
Yeah.
good wife guy energy. Yeah, I like it.
Yeah.
I was
Yeah.
like, listen, he's not wrong. Like,
He's not
hello.
wrong. She should have
Technically,
been
her
queen.
her son would have been the next in line. So, you know.
Right. Totally. So this is just really just a back and forth. And, you know, I think Otto, I'm not sure if it's Otto or one of the maesters that says, you know, if the gods should visit some further tragedy on you, either by design. And the Viserys gets very offended here. And it's like, my brother is not going to murder me. And he basically just like gets fed up and is like, you know, my wife and son are dead and I will not sit here and suffer crows that come to feast on their corpses. And he leaves. But there's a lot of back and forth of like, a girl is going to rule. Like, this is precedence of law. So we just see more of the same seemingly from the past here. But I thought this scene was pretty interesting.
Yeah, I mean, again, just I understand he's a grieving husband and he's grieving this whole thing with the heir son not working out, but also just like another excuse to just not make a decision. So like, you know, you all are just crows, and he calls them names, but I just another moment goes by and he just, you know, wants to defer or waffle or whatever.
Yep.
I think this is the only time he's actually shown a backbone at this point, because he's like, you know what? Fuck the law. This is my daughter, blah, blah, blah. But also, yeah, he's just so weak. Like, I can't deal with him. But yeah, this is probably the only time he's actually shown a backbone, in my opinion, because he's basically just not handing it over. Like when they were like, well, my son, no, it's my daughter. Right.
Does he say that in this moment?
He doesn't say it in the moment, but I feel like he just kind of brushes it off, because that's probably the next thing you could say. But I feel like he had in mind that it would be his daughter, because he was like, okay, what are the other options except Daemon? Because we're not doing this at this point. Yeah.
And I think there's another point in this that I also wrote down that I'm trying to find, but I cannot find it here. But it says something about the gods have yet to make a man who lacks the patience for absolute power, because they were saying that Daemon doesn't have the power, doesn't have the patience to rule, and he has ambition, but not for the throne. For the throne, he doesn't have the patience for it. And I thought that was just an interesting quote from Otto. The gods have yet to make a man who lacks the patience for absolute power, which I feel like he's probably talking about himself a little bit there, coming from Otto. Powerful guy, really likes to be able to call the shots behind the scenes. But from here, you know, he loses patience, he leaves, and then we see Otto, I think in his quarters, he calls down for Allison. She comes in and he checks on her, and he's seemingly like very nice and was like, you know, I'm thinking of your mother in this day. And then he goes, why don't you go check on the king and wear one of your mother's dresses? And she's like, in his bedroom? Like, what? This was a little fucked up and sick to me. And I was like, oh, okay. Especially knowing that this girl's very young. I mean, she presents more young to me than Rhaenyra does.
Yeah, I'm not surprised, because I feel like he's losing his grip at this point, and this is his like last Hail Mary to possibly get some sort of power.
Yeah.
So he's like, I'm gonna send my daughter in there. You know, maybe something will happen. Blah 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 blah, kind of deal. So, you know, I'm not surprised.
He's also sending a raven to Old Town. Do we know what is he just letting everybody know about the passing of the queen, or is there more to
Possibly.
this? Do we know?
I think they were talking about the thing on the king's back before. I don't know if it's related to that. It may also be like the passing of the queen. Queen. Who knows?
Yeah, I'm not sure.
Yeah,
I guess we'll find out, because they will come back, I'm sure.
yeah, I'm sure. Well, she goes. She visits him. She brings a book. She's wearing her mother's dress. He is in his pajamas. He's mourning over Queen Emma's wedding ring. He kisses it and puts it away back in his cloth when it comes in. And she just says, "I'm coming in to look in on you." She brought him a book. I know you like the histories. And then she basically says, when my mother died, people only ever spoke to me in riddles, and all I wanted was for people to tell me that they were sorry for what happened. So I'm very sorry, Your Grace. And then he kind of looks down, and then we immediately cut to Daemon in the brothel. And I'm upset because I feel like this means that like they got it in, and I really don't want Viserys to be like, all right, I'm gonna have sex with this child. But I don't know. I mean, they leave it open for interpretation. It seems like I'm sure
I don't
we'll
think
get
so.
confirmation.
I don't think yet. I think it will be. I feel like over time, like maybe they'll grow close or whatever. But I think because his daughter is like really close with her, like I think he still will see her that way. But I don't know. Who the hell knows? It's Game of Thrones, so
Yeah.
Who
Yeah, my interpretation was just that he like appreciated that in a surprising way, like that this comfort is coming from a surprising source, and so that they probably can connect in, you know, a very twisted but somewhat you know, actually like helpful way. So
yeah.
yeah.
Maybe it's
seems like
like
so
from
far
one
she's the
comfort
only
to
one.
another. You know?
Yeah. It seems like she's the only one that's actually shown him compassion and isn't trying to get something from him and is really just saying, you know, I'm sorry for what happened to you, and she can relate. So hopefully it's just a wholesome little check-in, and then that immediate cut to a brothel didn't wholesome from their end, obviously not wholesome from his end, because like hopefully the editing was just a little tricky. We'll see. I don't know. But we do get Daemon in a brothel. There's a big party. Seems like it's a celebration here. He seems like he's like a little in between, like not super happy, but not also super down in the dumps. We don't see too much from the party itself right away, but we get a council meeting almost right away where Otto is like, hey, I need to tell you what happened last night. Daemon bought out a whole pleasure house on the Street of Silk, and he had all the officers there. And then we get the cut of Daemon saying, it seems I'm not so easily replaced. The gods give as they take away. And Otto tells Viserys that he toasted the king's son and called him the heir for a day. He corroborated this with 3 witnesses, and the evening was celebratory. It was not somber. And this is where we finally get Viserys with a little bit of a backbone.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
And I feel like, again, we've established Daemon's a hothead. You know, I think he's also coming off the tournament. I know he didn't win the tournament, but he's like, I feel like that post-battle high, it's just like a lot to take in. I mean, I guess it's been days though, huh? So I realized like, because the funeral has already happened at this point.
Yeah, I guess so, right?
All right, never mind. I take it back.
I guess. Yeah, I don't know how quickly things work back then. But obviously they're not like embalming anyone, so they probably do the funeral pretty quickly.
Sure.
I would think. I don't know. Yeah, I don't know. But we do see Viserys on the throne, and Daemon comes in, and Viserys is pissed. And he's just like, oh, hey, brother, or whatever. And he's like, no, you're going to address me as your grace, or I'll have my Kingsguard cut out your
get
tongue.
the hell
like, he's
out of
pissed.
here.
Yeah. More pissed about him calling his son the heir for a day. Doesn't really say too much about his wife, unfortunately. Just, justice for Emma. That's all I have to say. Justice for her. And Viserys basically says, we must all mourn in our own way, your grace. And he says, my family's just been destroyed. And instead of being by my side, or Rhaenyra, you're out celebrating your rise. And it seems like he's finally seeing what Otto came out on top here. He won this war with Daemon so far, or at least this battle. I don't know if he'll win the full war. But Viserys is hurt, and he says, everything I've given you, you've thrown it back in your face, and I'm your only ally here on this council or in the court. And Daemon is like, well, you haven't asked me to be your hand. And he says, why would I ask you to be my hand? And Daemon says, because I'm your brother, and because of the blood of the dragon runs deep. And he says, I see Otto Hightower for what he is. And he says, Daemon says this, and Viserys is a loyal hand, and he calls him a cunt. And he says he's ambitious, and he's a second-born son who will never get anything that he doesn't seize for himself, which I think gives us more insight into Otto, coming from Daemon's lens, obviously, but he is clearly, he's getting power where he can because he's not going to inherit it from anyone. He's a second-born son. He's not the heir to anything, so he needs to make his own way and his own success, which is interesting. I think, we don't really get to know Otto that well, other than surface level. And this is an interesting insight that we get to see. And Viserys says Otto Hightower is a more honorable man than you could ever be. And Daemon says, well, he doesn't protect you, and I would protect you from yourself. You're weak, and you have a council full of leeches, and they know it, and they prey on you for their own ends, which is what we've been seeing this entire episode and what we've been saying this whole podcast. Like, he's right. He read him. Read him like a book.
To Phil.
Read him filth. He did. And Viserys names him, he says, I'm naming a new heir and you need to get the fuck out and go back to Runestone to your wife, and you get out. And if you don't we're going to have an issue. So he leaves, and at the end, Viserys gets cut again by the throne, which just says to me, the editing here is very interesting. This clearly took a lot out of him. He goes and he's slunks back into the throne, and he gets cut again. And he's just not meant to be sitting on this throne. It's not for him. They're doing a very good job of showing us that he is not made for this. He just keeps getting nicked and cut and stabbed. And it's just,
dragons have tough skin. And you're not the right dragon for this. So
no, he's not. And I don't think things are going to end well for our guy Viserys here.
Yeah, I'm getting those vibes. Definitely.
What do you think about this scene? Did you have any go ahead, Josh, what are your thoughts?
I liked what you're saying about the editing, or the getting cut, because I do think that that also shows, I feel a natural evolution of what we've seen from the throne, of all these thousands of swords or whatever, versus by the time we get to the seeing Robert on the throne, or Cersei or Joffrey or whoever, the throne is much smaller. It's probably, the knives are positioned a little bit differently, so you don't cut yourself as easily. You would feel after dozens of kings have sat on it before you, they kind of okay, we're going to make this a little bit more ceremonial rather than, as maybe as magnificent and sharp as it is, where we see it here. So yeah, throne's a little sharper, a little bigger, a little more uncomfortable, and Viserys does not sit on it well.
No, not everyone's made for it.
Nope.
Sucks. Poor guy. What I think they've done a great job of so far in this first episode, because it was a few minutes over an hour, it was maybe an hour and 5 minutes or so, and then they had some after the episode stuff after the credits, but I think they did a great job of setting the stage without feeding us way too much information. We really got the lay of the land here. We see who Viserys is without them having to be super heavy-handed about how weak of a ruler he is. We see it. They did a great job of showing that to us. We see the struggle of being a woman in this time and how they're just not respected as leaders and how there's no precedent for this yet. We see Daemon just being unpredictable and over the top, but seemingly measured and probably loyal. In some ways, obviously he's, not the best brother and not very sensitive and does things in his own weird way. And we see Otto being super ambitious, and we do see the court being leeches and the council being leeches and trying to feed off of it. I think they did a great job here without having to spoon feed it to us. So shout out to them. I don't know if you guys agree, but I feel like it was not, sometimes pilots, I feel or first episodes where they're really setting the stage can be just overloading and it's just so obvious. And this, I feel like they did a really good job.
Totally agree.
I agree.
Yeah. No, I mean, there's very little exposition. They have a voiceover in that first scene, and everything else is just very efficiently told throughout the episode. Yeah, I couldn't agree more.
Yeah, this is ultimately a setup episode for what's to come, and it didn't feel like it was a setup episode to me. It felt we were picking up on the story and where full systems go, but obviously this is not anywhere close to where we're going to end.
Yeah.
D&D could never. Shout out to our current showrunners. So from here, we are in the Dragon Chamber. What is the official name of this room? The Dragon Basement that we have in King's Landing. I know that's obviously not the name.
Dungeons and Dragons. I don't know.
Yeah, the Dungeons and Dragons room. And we see this giant dragon, Valeria, I believe is the name. And is this Aegon's dragon? Do we know?
The Aegon the Conqueror's dragon?
Mm-hmm.
Valeria is the oldest dragon.
The oldest dragon. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, so it's not Aegon's.
So it may have been Aegon's, but probably I don't know if Aegon's dragons would even be around anymore at this point. But
yeah, it was just the big skull. Yeah.
Yeah.
Right. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
And so we see Viserys down there, and he's everything is lit up by candles. It's pretty beautiful and striking. And it's just sad because we know what ends up happening to that room later in Game of Thrones. It's just kind of a bummer. But it's nice to see it kind of in its glory again. It's another one of those things where we get to see it in its prime. And Rhaenyra comes down and he says to her, when you look at the dragons, what do you see? And she basically says you have not talked to me at all since the funeral, and now your Kingsguard is bringing me down here. And he's like, actually, you need to answer me right now. Like, this is important. And she says, I see us. Everyone says that the Targaryens are closer to God than to men, but they say that because of our dragons, and without them, we're just like everyone else. And, they kind of go over the fact that, the idea that they control the dragons is an illusion, and that they're a power that men should have never trifled with. And it brought Valyria to its doom. And if we don't pay attention to our history, it'll do the same to us. And that the Targaryens need to understand this to be king. And then he says, or queen. And she's kind of like, wait, what? Like, And then we kind of get like another really nice cut and juxtaposition scene between her getting prepared to, I guess, I don't know if this ceremony has a name. I guess he's just naming her his heir. But we see her getting prepared, and we see Allison as her hand kind of dressing her. And he basically says, you were made to wear the crown. Your mother believed it. I believed it. And you're my heir. And she takes it on. And we see the same or similar ceremony, not the same exact, but that we saw in the beginning. And we see all of the heads of the houses pledging their loyalty to King Viserys and his heir, Princess Rhaenyra. We get a Stark in there. We have a Baratheon in there. We have some names that we know. And then we get the Song of Ice and Fire convo, Josh, that you mentioned earlier. And he just says, also, like, while you're here, I just need to tell you this before you rule. But Aegon had another dream. And he says, Aegon looked across the Blackwater at Dragonstone, saw rich land ripe for the capture. But ambition alone's not what drove him to conquest. So he's saying this dream basically led him to conquer Westeros, which is strange. And it was a dream. And he says, as Daenerys saw the fall of Valyria, Aegon foresaw the end of the world of men. It's to begin with a terrible winter gusting out of the distant north. And then as they say that, we see Rickon Stark pledging his loyalty, which I thought was cool. And they saw a darkness riding on the winds, and whatever dwells within will destroy the world of the living. And when this great winter comes, all of Westeros must stand against it. And if the world of men is to survive, it must be Targaryen must be sitting on the throne, a king or queen strong enough to unite the realm against the cold and the dark. Aegon called his dream a song of ice and fire, and this secret has been passed from king to heir since Aegon's time. I don't know why this is a secret. He is holding his Valyrian blade. I assume it's a Valyrian blade that he has on his hip. This was, I agree, Josh. I liked this, but I didn't love this. I don't know what you guys.
I don't know why this needed to be in here. Like,
it didn't.
Yeah,
and it's not, Josh, you're right. It's not
it.
what happened. It's just not what happened.
Yeah. I hated this on multiple levels.
All right, go into. I'm ready for it.
I loved the bending the knee from the Baratheons, seeing them at the tournament, Starks. Again, like I like going back to Westeros. That is fun, and I'm here for that. I just think like this was such an unnecessary shoehorned in like reference to like how this ties into the first show, and I just feel like the strength of what they're building off of from the previous series is the world building.
Yep.
And the cons, right, are how the last story ended up and how it unfolded. And so the prophecy doesn't even match up with what happened. So then it just feels like, well, then this is like some secret prophecy that's not even like, correct. And then two, like they didn't know the prophecy. I mean, like the Prince of this promised, he says that phrase as well as a Song of Ice and Fire. So those things, maybe the secrets leak and, it does end up influencing the events of A Song of Ice and Fire, the original Game of Thrones series. But it just feels like, oh, I don't need to be reminded of that. Like that's the part of this whole thing that I'm trying to forget.
Yes.
And
I
so
need this.
I really just that, and I didn't like that. Now, one thing I will say that I did listen to an interview with Ryan Condell, one of the two showrunners on here, and he was talking about how this, that tidbit is completely new. It's not in the books. It's not in anything George R. R. Martin's ever shared. Aegon's conquest is like the biggest event, that changed. I mean, literally they date their days after the conquest. So it's like, everything in their society is like post Aegon's conquest. And so the fact that he had the secret thing was new, but Ryan Condell actually George R. R. Martin is the one that shared that with him. So like with them. So it is like something that George R. R. Martin has always kept, was that Aegon came with the secret mission, even though he's never written it into any of his books or anything yet. But so that makes me feel fine as far as like the fact goes. But it just felt like an unnecessary callback, you know, in the worst way to the original series. All right, sorry for the little rant, but I did not like it.
I love a rant.
I was
I'm
like, this is like hitting every mark so far, clearing a really high bar for the show to go over, and then this like last thing at the end just was like, no,
Let's pretend it didn't happen.
Yeah, it's like, we don't need this wound reopen. The scab is finally healing. Like, we don't need it, and it's just ripped wide open. Now it's like a wound again, and we're just thinking back to like, oh, none of that shit actually mattered. None of it mattered. This was all pointless.
Yeah,
and
but like
the world wasn't
like,
united.
yeah.
It was like 4 houses. It was like a 5-minute battle that we couldn't even see on TV. And Arya killed the Night King. It wasn't a Targaryen. It wasn't even Jon, who was half Targaryen. That was just it was just a mess.
It just doesn't make any sense, because like if this is like a prophecy that gets passed down, like, 1, why didn't Dany know about it? And 2, why did no other king ever know about it? Like,
Right.
it just doesn't add up. Like, it was not a thing. It doesn't, it just seemed unnecessary, but
yeah,
you know,
Yeah.
whatever.
Maybe if they could have used this somehow to like polish up what happened at the end, I would have been okay with it. But like, they didn't. This is like,
Yeah.
I don't know. And I am not the author of this book, of this series, obviously, of this whole entire story. I have not architected it. I'm just a viewer and a Wikipedia reader on occasion, and a Reddit deep diver when I don't mind getting spoiled. And I just feel like I prefer the idea of Jon being a Song of Ice and Fire, and the story being about Jon, which obviously the story ended with Jon just getting nerfed into the ground and being the worst character in like the last 2 seasons, unfortunately. But like, he to me is a Song of Ice and Fire. He's half Targaryen, he's half Stark, he's the rightful heir to the throne. It's just like, now this is a Song of Ice and Fire, this thing that kind of didn't really matter. I don't know, it's just kind of like meh to me. I'm with you. I'm with you.
Let's pretend it didn't happen. Maybe it's just a little thing they threw in because they were like,
I have a feeling they're never going to mention this again.
Yeah, that's what I mean.
So
yeah,
at least we get that.
I think they had some anxieties about like, okay, we got to make it seem somewhat connected to the original show.
Yeah,
and I just think like they were better off just set it in the world. Just don't deal with it, you know?
I think that what they did in the beginning, just saying like this is 172 years or whatever before Daenerys Targaryen was born, like perfect. That's all we needed. We don't need any more. We know the timeline. Else. We know where they are. We know this family. We're good. We don't need to go back to this like, oh, by the way, he had this secret dream. It's like, why is a dream secret? Why does it have to be secret? I don't understand. I just don't understand. It's just silly. I didn't love that. I'm with you. But we did see Daemon fly away on his dragon. He's leaving. He's going back to the Vale with his mistress in tow, which was interesting. They had a moment. They were like petting the dragon's face, and he's like, "Come touch it," and then they just fly away. Very skinny dragon too. He was like a weirdly shaped. And then we just see Rhaenyra kind of turn around, and we hear the Old Faithful song in the background, and we are off. We're off to the races. That's it. That's our first episode.
Woohoo! Yeah.
Any closing thoughts? I'm excited.
Me too. I'm excited too.
Yeah, I definitely. I'm in. They got me back.
They got me back too.
Yeah, I'm here.
Yeah, my only two gripes, Josh, it's the Song of Ice and Fire part for sure, and the theme song. Maybe we'll get a new theme song in the next episode.
I'm hoping.
Or a new opening.
Yeah, I'm kind of with you though. I feel like again, like the theme. I actually feel the same in that like it does call back to the show unnecessarily, the original series unnecessarily in a way that they don't need to like connect themselves to. Again, just unnecessary.
Yeah, I agree. And it's like, we know what we're watching. If you're watching it, you know what you're watching. You know what Game of Thrones is, at least. 100%. So maybe it is just a first episode, like setting the stage, and now we'll get something. I'm hoping for something grand in the next one, something that will brand this its own. Yeah.
Yeah.
Cool. I'm excited too. I'm excited to see the time jump. I'm excited to see some of the new actors as they're older. I think we're in for a good season. I think it's 10 episodes. Where traditionally, is it normally 10? Were the seasons normally 10 episodes, or were they 8? They
The
were
I
10.
think
later
no, there were 10.
They were
yeah.
10. Okay.
The later
'Cause the
seasons
ninth-
were 7 and 8, right? I
Yeah,
think?
yeah. The last
Yeah.
one was like,
Yes.
yeah, the 7th and 8th were chopped. But yeah, the 9th episode
was always the
was always
penultimate,
the
yeah.
one where everything happened. And so yeah, it was 10 episodes.
Yeah. Well, awesome. So we can go ahead and close out. We're like almost double the time of how long the episode actually was, but we had a lot of stuff to say here, okay?
Okay.
So Josh, where can the people find you on the internet these days?
Yeah, find me at Josh Kettles on Twitter. It's probably the easiest place to find me. And then, yeah, other than, of course, Silent Podcast, talking about Game of Thrones here. And also be this week a guest on Stark Wars. If you want to check that, I'll be talking about She-Hulk
Awesome.
with them. And then in a few weeks here when Survivor starts up, joshtakes.com.
Awesome. Very exciting. Chanelle, where can the people find you?
Yeah, so you can find me on the 3 T's, Twitter, TikTok, Twitch, at Coder Girl Chan. Mostly talking about coding stuff, lots of variety gaming, just whatever. And I guess right now Game of Thrones. But yeah, you can catch me on those. I'm mostly on Twitter and Twitch though. So yeah, come check it out.
Casually killing it across the 3 T's.
The 3 T's.
The 3 T's. And you can follow me if you would like to at Real Slim Katie on Twitter. You can also follow me on Twitch at twitch.tv/Real Slim Katie with an underscore at the end. Also doing some variety gaming over there. And you can find me all over the place on Silent Podcasts these days. I am talking Big Brother on the Bounce Checks podcasts with Isaiah, Josiane, and Lance when he's able to join us, and occasionally rotating guest every Friday. You can find Carrie and I talking all things The Challenge on TJ Hates Quitters, Challenge USA anyway, undetermined what the next season will be, if I will be covering it or not, but Carrie definitely will. And you can also find us covering all things in the Real Housewives universe on the Cool Water Show, also with Carrie on Silent Podcast. So if you're not tired of hearing me, you can hear me at all those places. And if you are, I don't blame you. You can also give Silent Podcasts a follow everywhere you listen to your podcasts, basically. And you can also give us, if you would like to watch us live, we love when people watch us live. We love interacting with the chat. It's very fun. So please feel free, or you can see our faces later on demand on Twitch at Silent Podcasts. You can also find us on YouTube if you search Silent Podcasts. You can give us a follow on Twitter at silent_podcasts if you would like to keep up to date with all the things that we are working on and releasing. You can also feel free to give us a review if you would like to, if you liked what you heard today. We prefer 5-star reviews, so that would really be helpful for us. It would help us get discovered, and it'll bring us up in the search history and all of that kind of stuff. So anything you would like, any review or rating you leave us is more than helpful. So thank you guys. This is a lot of fun. I'm really excited to talk about this season with you both. And thank you all for listening. Thank you for tuning in live, if you have tuned in live, or if you're watching the video. And we will see you next week. Thank you, everybody.
Bye.
Take
Bye.
care.